Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host. Sorry, I put the the wrong screen on. Good evening once again. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, a very special thank you. Tonight, I anticipate a very exciting conversation. I'm very thrilled to welcome to our show two best-selling authors, Carol Taylor and Marissa Monteilh. But before I introduce you to them, I want to speak a little bit about relationship. I mean, the topic tonight is about relationship. I don't know if this is relative, but one of the things I often talk about is that when I meet someone for the first time and our souls connect and I feel good about that person and they me, I really don't care to be informed by others about their past. That doesn't really matter to me. Because what I've discovered that some of the most wonderful, the most beautiful, most giving and loving people are those you meet. Those people who you may say, or someone may say they have a checkered past. But I like to accept people as they are. The other thing is love, and this is kind of like funny. I think that one of the most hilarious ironies about love is that sometimes it appears funny, but but love is not a joke. So I'm not going to spend much more time talking about or giving any sort of preambles. We have a packed show tonight, and I'm excited to bring on our guests. So I'll take a break, and when I get back, Carl Taylor and Marissa Monteilh.
Not golden arrowhead. I don't think you heard me. I said arrowhead. I love my golden arrowhead. Mama, mama, mama. All GT Massive and crew, where are you? Where are you? If you're present, represent. If you're present, represent. Represent. Sing out. From Guyana, mash it up. To Canada, mash it up. From Ituni, mash it up. To Miami, mash it up. From Buxton, mash it up. To Brixton, mash it up. From Leghorn, mash it up. To London, mash it up. Hear them arrowhead. I love my golden arrowhead. If you feel it in your heart, if you get me through your part, arrowhead. I love my golden arrowhead. When I see the flag waving, it's a sight that's so amazing. And I can feel the rhythm blazing. And then you hear the people them saying, arrowhead. I love my golden arrowhead. Children, arrowhead. I love my golden arrowhead. When I smell the corn baking, and I can hear the shack shaking. I'm throwing bird like bacon.
I am back. Those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS. The lovely lady next to me is Carol Taylor. As I said before, I am honored and thrilled to welcome two best-selling authors, Carol Taylor, who you can see on the other side of the screen, and the person you cannot see yet is Marissa Monteilh, author who writes as the author Pink. So let me start by introducing you to Carol Taylor. Carol Taylor, former Random House book editor, has been in book publishing for almost 20 years and has worked with many of today's top black writers. She's a freelance book editor, ghostwriter, and editorial consultant, a best-selling author of 8 books, among them Brown Sugar, her best-selling 4-book erotic fiction series, Wanderlust, Erotic Travel Tales, her novel The X Chronicles Plan B, and Insignificant Others, written with author Pink. Marissa, Monteilh is the best-selling author of 6 erotica titles. She won the 2008 Unity Award for Fast Rising Literary Star and DissyGold.com's Most Outstanding Author of the Year Award for 2009. Voted amongst the 2010 Women of Influence in Publishing by Written Magazine and a 2010 Pink Diamond Award honoree at the African American Literary Festival, hosted by Sister Friend Book Club. Marissa Monteilh, a former model, television news reporter, and commercial actress, originally self-published her first book, May December Souls, in November 2000. Voted amongst the 2010 Women of Influence in Publishing by Written Magazine. And I think I read this here before. Anyway, Pink's December 2012 novel tackled the topic of politics and the call girl industry in New York City, which called politics, escorts, blackmail. And in May 2013, the long-awaited sequel to Erotic City, called Erotic City Miami, debuted in an erotic, sexy, and sophisticated anthology with best-selling author Carol Taylor called Insignificant Others. Insignificant Others is a four-part erotic series, ebook, audio, print. Parts 2, 3, and 4 will be released in November 2013, May 2014 to November 2014, respectively. The prequel to Erotic City, called The Making of Milan, comes out in ebook 2014. The heat keeps on coming. All right. Carol,
It's getting
since
hot
I have
in
you on
here.
the screen,
It's
I'm
getting
so
hot
happy
in
to have you.
here.
I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Selwyn. It's always good to talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me start with you. You have been featured in Essence, Ebony, Black Enterprise, Honey, BT, Heart and Soul, the Boston Globe, the Daily News, among many other publications. You've also appeared on BT Tonight with Ed Gordon and ABC Eyewitness News. With all the accomplishments, accolades, and publicity, who's Carol Taylor?
You know, that's interesting. When I look at the road I've taken these almost 20 years in publishing as a writer and an editor, I'm finding that there is a connection not only to what I'm doing, but to who I am. I'm finding that the work that I do, the best of, always comes back to relationships. Everything I write, my 8 books, most of the pieces I write for magazines, all come back to relationships, friendships, lovers, parents. Everything I write, that is the thread that sort of holds it all together. So I guess I'm a person who is trying to figure out those relationships just like everyone else.
Well, I'm hope by the end of this conversation tonight, you and Marissa will help not only yourselves, but us figure this out, right? How do you manage to stay grounded?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I think it has a lot to do with my background. I'm Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica, born in Kingston and Franklin Town, and came to the U.S. fairly young. And so my past, my parents, really gave me sort of the groundwork to be the person who I am. And even in corporate America, as a writer, as an editor, working with a number of well-known best-selling authors, I never really lose sight of who I am. And it helps me that my friends are not unlike me, even though they are all very different from each other and from myself. So these relationships that I have, the past, the present, and certainly in the future, will keep me sort of as the very grounded person who I am today.
And so when did you start writing fiction?
I started writing, I think I started writing fiction when I had a diary. I've always had a diary. I've always journaled. I was always dreaming up stories and scenes and scenarios in my head as a little girl. And I didn't actually become a quote-unquote author until I published Brown Sugar, which was the first of that 4-book series. Back in 2000, I started writing that in about 99. And that was when I quote-unquote called myself a writer. I was an author. And I really haven't looked back since. I'm always thinking up stories. I have so many different characters in my head all the time. And many of my stories, my novels, fiction, they're really kind of based on my life and on my friends and on my relationships. And that's why there's never a dearth of wonderful stories to tell and fantastic, multi-layered characters of every color and stripe.
Wow. And why did you start writing erotic fiction?
You know, I have been reading Harlequin romances since I was a teenager. I'm going to say teenager, but I was probably 12 or 13. And they just really opened the door to a lot of wonderful characters and stories and lands. It didn't really matter what was going on. It was really about where we were, who they were, what were they going through. And when I first penned a story for Brown Sugar, it wasn't necessarily quote unquote erotica. It's really funny. I'm best known for being an erotica author, a best-selling erotica author. Although there are many stories in Brown Sugar where there's absolutely no sex in them.
Yeah.
I've published a number of people, Edwige Danticat, and she has a story in Brown Sugar that has absolutely no sex in it. I've published Bernice McFadden, I've published Zane. It's really not about the sex on the page, it's really about the interactions and the relationships. You cannot write about relationships between a man and a woman, a love relationship, without there being sex involved. That would be unrealistic. So it's not necessarily about the act itself, it's about how they relate to each other and the interplay of this relationship. That's what makes it interesting, and that's really what makes it multi-layered and textural, and that's what the reader relates to.
What I like about this conversation so far, it's that it's the thread or the rope that it is weaving, and it is taking us to that place, that space where we really get into relationship building. And so I thank you for that. I've just included Maritza in the shot. I think we lost her. We just lost her. All right. So let's continue until she comes back. So, do you think anyone can write erotic fiction?
I think anyone can write, period. I think anyone can include the different dimensions of relationships within their stories. Any story I write can have different elements and varying degrees of sex and sexuality. It's how much of that is actually told on the page and shown on the page. A lot of sexual interaction happens without two people touching. You know if you have chemistry with someone simply by how you feel when you're around them. If you can translate that onto the page, you almost don't have to deal with the mechanics itself. And sometimes that's far more sexy. I hear men say all the time, you know, it's okay when women wear tight clothing and short things, but it's often what I don't see that turns me on. And that really translates to the page.
I believe that.
Absolutely.
That's me. Yeah, I love to see women in long skirts. But anyway, tell me about your writing process. How do you come up with the characters? What about plot?
You know, it's so funny. I don't really plot out. I have an overall outline, and then I write scenes. And then, funny enough, the scenes start to write themselves. The characters start interacting, and they make the scenes happen.
Hello, Maritza.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, you're just in time. I want to put you on the screen with Carol. And the question I have for you is, do you think well, before I go there, Carl, you were just finishing off about how the scene writes themselves. And then
Yeah.
the character, sorry about
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't really plot. I have an overall idea of the story I want to tell. But what's really funny is that my characters will, through their interactions on the page, they start to create their own scenes. And they create viable alternatives for what can happen next. Oh, that makes sense. This should happen. So I'll write that scene, and in doing that, something else will happen that will create another scene. And it's through the characters' interactions that I actually start to tell their stories. They're actually telling their own stories. I'm really just sort of a vessel. And that never fails to intrigue me about how that happens. And I think it's really because of the characters themselves. It's really not about me. It's about those characters that are created on the page. They then start to tell their stories. So if you're a writer and you want to be able to have a very deep well to go to, create multi-layered characters who are real to you. Have in their head who they are, why they are the way they are, and create real relationships so that they can relate to each other on the page. Then it's really not even work.
I like that. Marissa, I ask you the same question. Tell us about your writing process and how do you come up with the characters?
Well, the way I write now is different from the way I started out. I'm actually a little bit more organized now in that I use an outline. And so I really take time to get to know the characters as best as I can. Surprise me. So you don't want to think that you know them too well. But I usually work out a resume. And as Carol said, you get to know their issues, where they're from. Are they from a broken home? Do they have an education? What do they do for a living? What are their upsides, especially what are their downsides? There's an arc that every character needs to have. There's a mission you need to establish in the beginning of every story. And so I get to know them as best as I can. And sometimes this isn't even typing it out. It may be when you're driving, maybe when you're in the shower, maybe when you're trying to sleep, where you get to know characters. And I know you've heard writers say that our characters talk to us. They literally do. And so once you get to know them, then I sit down and I write an outline of 30 chapters. I have 30 scenes. And my book may end up with 50 scenes or 20 scenes, but I start out with 30 scenes. And I try to, scene 19 might be a church scene. Scene 12 might be a scene at a club. Scene 30 might be a funeral. Whatever I'm in the mood to write, I can write it in that way. I don't write in order like I used to, 1 to 30. I write kind of what I feel like writing. And it always changes. My outlines in the beginning are never the way the story ends. So they do take on a life of their own. But that's the best process for me to stay organized.
And have the two of you ever done this before? Like come together on a show and talk about relationships?
We've done interviews together. Yes, I don't think, Marissa, that we've talked necessarily about relationships in particular, though we talk about relationships because we write about relationships. Is that right?
That's true. That's true. We haven't talked about them specifically, but yes, our books do relate to relationships, especially when you have a book called Insignificant Others, because we're focusing on the infidelity theory that a lot of people like to talk about. It's happened to many, many people. So when you're relating in as far as personal relationships, and then also you've got the friends, the family, and all that. So coming together with those two stories, we had that in common. Carol and I think our thought processes and our backgrounds, even though she's from a more exotic background, I'm from Inglewood, California.
That's kind of exotic.
I think that we both enjoy relationships. And we like focusing on those type of topics, and our books usually focus back upon that. So we haven't done it, together before, but in this series, we're having an opportunity to bring it together.
And this question is for both of you.
Okay.
What is the difference between erotic fiction and porn? And do you think readers get it mixed up? What about romance and erotica? So there are 3 parts. So the first part is, what's the difference between erotic fiction and porn?
I'll start and I'll turn it over to Marissa, because this is a question I have had I hear quite a bit of. I don't think that people make that mistake about what is erotic fiction, what is erotica, and what is porn or pornography quite anymore, because there is now so much erotica and different levels of erotica in fiction these days, particularly with 50 Shades of Grey, which is at times far more pornographic than anything I've actually worked on. So for me, it's really sort of varying degrees of sex, sensuality. I have this joke. Whenever someone asks me to write something as a person who writes erotica for a magazine, I will say, well, do you want 1x, 2x, or 3x? Because it's really simply varying degrees. But you can write a sexy paragraph without there being any sex at all. So for me, it's the mechanics. How detailed are we getting? What are the words are we using? How does it make me feel? Pornography makes me feel one way. Romances make me feel one way. Erotica makes me feel another. And so it's really quite subjective. And again, I say, what are the words on the page? Because that has to do, I think, with the genres as well. But I don't really think, back in 2000 when Brown Sugar came out, there was this, well, is this pornography? Is this pornographic? Will they stock it at Borders and B&N? This is no longer an issue. We basically have a new genre that is erotica. And any number of authors write into it with varying degrees of success and in many different types of publications and commercial houses. Brown Sugar was published by Viking Penguin. So for me, it's no longer even an indication of what is the genre. It's really what are you looking for.
Do you think this is as a result of the audience becoming more literary mature or an accepting of that type of writing? Or is it that because there's such an abundance of it that it's kind of like become part of our, our ethos?
Yes and yes. Marissa, do you agree?
I do. I think that many more readers do not have the shock value that they had before. I think a lot of them have gotten over that. I do think that it is about interpretation. I mean, I haven't had an editor say to me that this is crossing the line into porn, but I may have a scene, say in Politics, Escorts, Blackmail. There are some escorts that are asked to do certain things, and I included that in there. There are some choking scenes during an encounter. There are some things that people might consider risque, and they might consider that to be porn. It's their own interpretation of it. When I think porn, I don't think so much of the story as I think of the sex itself. So you can have the knock at the door, and there's the pool boy or the pizza boy or whatever, and then next thing you know, they're on the counter in the kitchen. I think with erotica, there's a bit more introduction into the dimensions of the character, their background, their children, their grandparents, where they're from, what they're feeling. A woman who owns a swingers club, why would she buy a swingers club? And she doesn't swing, and she's married. So what's the whole dynamic of that? So getting deeper into the character itself, I think a lot of readers are giving themselves a chance to get to know the characters personally. And for me, my women's fiction stories might be very similar to my erotic stories, but I consider that I have more of a license to use certain words in my erotica. So I do think that readers are much more used to it now. There's a lot of commercial erotica. I mean, Zane broke the mold years ago. A lot of people had not read paragraphs like that, stories like that. Now they don't even blink an eye. So I do think that readers are much more used to it now.
While we have you on, Marissa, on the camera actually, give us a minute or less as to who is Marissa Monteilh.
Who is Marissa Monteilh? Wow, you asked Carol if she was grounded. I was going to say, I don't know if I'm so grounded. I'm not so sure. I am a parent. I'm a mate. I'm a friend. And I'm a very creative person. I have been considered to be a type A personality. I have not been the 9 to 5 for a long time. I did a lot of 9 to 5, and I worked 3 jobs at times to raise my kids. But I preferred being the news reporter. I preferred working from home and writing. I was a producer on the tabloid show Hard Copy. I hosted my own relationship show called The Opposite Sex. I've always got ideas in my head, and I get that from my mother. She was always coming up with some idea. But I am very creative. Normally I'm the one asking the questions, not answering, so I'm still, after all these years, getting used to answering the questions. but I'm a very creative person, and most of my creations do come back to relationships, as Carol said. So I really love the study of relating, and especially women who are so liberated that sometimes we need to learn to be the queen more so. So that's been my focus in a lot of my books, is to have women to kind of understand that sometimes we need to look at ourselves and try to do better. So that's one of my missions. That's one thing that I love, is talking about relationships, definitely.
In terms of relationships, I love to follow the flow. That's how I have or conduct my conversations. And you mentioned, you know, having these relationship seminars or relationship dialogues and so on. And if you had to speak to a group of women right now, what is the one thing you would want them to know about themselves that is important in having a wholesome relationship with a man, I should say?
One thing I think that women need to take the time to do is look at who we are. And I believe that there's masculine and feminine energy. I think that there are leaders and there are followers. And a lot of women are leaders. We've had to be. We're liberated. And we can castrate men sometimes, because the men typically lead. The kings lead and the queens follow. And I think over time, as we've become more liberated and we've expected respect from our children and our employees, we don't know how to take that hat off when we get home. And so we're telling our man how to fold the towels and what movie we want to see, and why didn't he do this or that. And we're making the decisions. And I think if we learn to want to be cherished more, then we can tap into our feminine side a little bit better. So I always ask women, do they want to receive, or do they want to give? Do they want to give the direction, or do they want to follow? So deciding if we're leaders and followers makes a big difference in a relationship. And sometimes we need to learn to be followers. If you have two leaders, you're butting heads, and if you have two followers, you're going nowhere. So when I do interviews with women, when I talk to women, I ask them to really think about whether they are leaders or followers in their personal relationships.
What about the woman who asks, is this interchangeable? If she chooses to be a follower, should she follow all the time? Or are there instances when she should lead? Or if she chooses to be a leader, should she lead all the time? Or are there instances when she should follow? Is it interchangeable?
It can be interchangeable, but sometimes you can stumble over each other if someone is not in the mood for you to be the leader. Mm-hmm. And for, it can change. And I think we need to be sensitive about that. There are some men that don't want to make the decisions, and they would prefer that a woman be the leader in certain situations. But I do think it's interchangeable. I do think there are times when feminine men, and when I say feminine, I don't mean sexually feminine, I mean energy feminine, followers, they really do want to take the lead sometimes. And so if you don't know how to acquiesce, if you don't know how to sit back and let that happen, or step up when needed, then we will stumble over each other's feet. And I think a lot of times those disagreements happen because we are so strong, and you have two people trying to lead, and we can, without even knowing it, as I said, castrate certain men. So I do think it's interchangeable at times, but you've got to be real careful about that. Because if the other one isn't going with that, then there's some disagreements that come up.
Well, this is for both you and Carol. Let's take the relationship where these roles are sort of being acted out. One is a leader and one is a follower. But then something happens. There's a cross or a miscommunication or something. One who's supposed to be leading follows, and vice versa. And then there's problem. And for some strange reason, because of the various personalities, they can't get back to that space where they're having a wholesome relationship, or they what do you say to that couple or to that woman? Well, let's say to the couple, both men and women. What do you say to them to help them to get out of that maze of discontent and confusion and so on?
Well, I would say that it's about communication.
Communication.
Absolutely about communication. Where did you lose your communication? Were you communicating clearly? Are you both on the same page? Do you both want the same thing? Where are you both coming from? Where are you both going? For me, in writing about relationships, in writing about infidelity in significant others, I'm finding that where men and women go astray is because they don't actually communicate what it is they want, how it is they're feeling, and what it is they want out of that relationship. And I'm finding when men stray or women don't feel loved or cared for, it's because they really haven't been talking to each other. They haven't been making each other feel good about who they are, what they're doing, where they're going. I was watching a program about relationships. Men were on, I think it was Katie Couric, and she asked them, why is it that men stray? And most of these men said, because we're not getting what we want. And she said, well, how do you get what you want? And none of them could actually answer that question. And I was with someone and he said, you guys aren't talking to each other. You're not talking. And that really was basically it. You have to talk to each other. We can't read each other's minds. And we can't be afraid to open up, to let go, and to, if you're with this person, you have to be able to trust them. Communication really is about the underlying issue of trust. Do I trust this person enough to open up and talk to them and communicate my feelings and misgivings and desires and hopes on every level?
And that brings in the question of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
So who do you think is able to deal with vulnerability more in your experience? You write a lot about characters and so on, both of you. Men or women?
Wow. I'm a woman, so I don't know if I can give a really objective answer, but I know that when I write my characters, I give men as much say emotionally as women. I don't write cookie cutter male characters. I'm writing about characters in Insignificant Others where this guy is a player. He plays around. He has a girlfriend. He loves his girlfriend. But he can separate out sex and love, which I hear more men can do than women. Not every woman can't do that, but apparently men can do it a lot easier than women. And although he cheats on her, he still loves her. And when she leaves him, he wants her back. And he says to himself, I don't know if I can stop cheating, but this doesn't mean that I don't love you. And so I think that it's really about how well do we know each other and how well do we know ourselves. No one gets away with not getting hurt. I don't know anyone who has not had an issue of infidelity. It's really how did you get here? Who is this person? Why is he or she doing it? And how do you work it out? You have to talk about it and know who you're dealing with.
And Marissa, you feel...
As far as vulnerability, wow, I think that men feel hurt just like women do. Some men don't communicate it as well. I do believe that, when men are younger, when they're boys talk to each other and they're not looking at each other as much. They look away. Women, we tend to have more of a feeling mechanism, and it is a little bit easier for us to express. Not every woman and not every man is this way, because I've met exceptions to the rule. But I do think that expressing that vulnerability, it is about communication, and it's about how you do it. A lot of us women, and you'll notice that I focus on women because I think that we have certain complaints, but if we can work within ourselves, we might see a different reaction, a different result. And that's what happened to me years ago. I changed years ago. I was one of those RESPECT, Aretha Franklin women, like, you will respect me. But if I had a complaint, I just came right at you, like, bam. And I think that I learned to say, is now a good time? And as soon as you get that other person's permission that that is a good time, if they say no, it's not a good time, then it's not. But if it is a good time, it's almost like the male will shift the lobe, so to speak, so that he's open to what you have to say. And instead of saying, you didn't do this, and how dare you, and if you were a man, and if you this and that, men shut down. There's a way to say, you have every right to stay out until 4 in the morning and not call me. However, I'm uncomfortable with that. And that is not something that I'm willing to tolerate. You have every right to do it again. You're taking a risk as to whether or not I'll still be here. But, when the emotion is coming up and that vulnerability, and we're feeling they're cheating and they're being used and then they're feeling attacked, that's how the arguments start. And there's a way to do it. And as Carol said, communication is so important. You have to, there's a way to do it, definitely.
I have this question for you, Maritza.
Yes.
What is it like? What is a day in the life of Marissa like?
Being in my life?
Yes, a day in your life. I mean, what is your day like? Yes.
A day in my life. Wow. I am an early riser and I try to go to bed. I've always been one who needs 7 to 8 hours sleep. So if I've had 4 hours sleep, I'm going to need a nap during the day. But I wake up early and I try my best to do some type of creative work when it's quiet. There's just something about early morning where I can, dig into a manuscript and get right into it. But, there are other things that need to be done as well. There's promotion, there are schedules, there are personal things that need to be done as well. But I'm usually an early riser. I try to write until maybe 10, 11 o'clock, do some kind of promotion or things that need to be done during the day. There are times that I babysit my granddaughter. I mean, that's one of the great cherishes of my life. And then when things quiet down again, I might jump back into a story, but I always have a work in progress, always. And I do work from home. I try to take vacations every now and then just to get away because I'm at home a lot. But I really like things like going to the post office. I'll put that off until later because I've usually got something going on that I need to stick with, and there's always some deadline. But that's pretty much the day in the life of Marissa Monteilh, promoting, writing. I don't talk on the phone a lot. I don't interact with my friends as much as I should. I have to get better at that. I need to make myself go to the movies or visit and things like that because I've always got these deadlines, so it's kind of hard to pull away, but I need to get better at that. But usually my life revolves around my family first and then obviously the writing.
And for you, Carol?
It's not unlike Marissa's. I like to get up early. I do my best writing and thinking in the morning. I tend to run out of creative gas around 3 or 4 o'clock if I've been writing from 8 in the morning. I get up, I have a cup of coffee, I will tape some shows on my DVR, and then I will sit at my computer. I will do some social media promotions. I'll see what's going on in the social media world. I'll do whatever promos I need to do for whatever book I'm working on, and then I will get to work. Whether that is editing someone else's manuscript, whether that is doing work on my own book, whether that is putting together a syllabus for courses that I teach, whatever that happens to be, I will do that probably until 4 or 5 o'clock, and then I'll stop and I'll run some errands, I'll go outside, I'll go to the park, I'll do something. I have, over these last almost 20 years now, figured out that I should have one day off. You work 7 days a week, people think, oh, you work at home, that's so wonderful, you work whenever you want. I'm like, but I work all the time because it's always there, and it's not really quote-unquote work, although it is working.
Yes.
When you work creatively, you will have ideas coming at you all the time. You're jotting them down, you're creating something, you're outlining something, you're running to the computer. Oh, this is chapter 4. No, this should be chapter 2. You really have to stop. And I've made myself take one day a week off, and that's Sunday. And I have a movie day where I will go to the movies. I have a day where I will meet my friends. Or you just will do it all the time, and you will burn out. and then you'll wonder why you can't get this story going, because you really do have to kind of regroup. If you don't take time out, your body will take it for you. So for me, that's pretty much my day. And then for the rest of the evening, whatever social activity I'll do. But you know, sitting at a desk and working for 6 to 8 hours is actually really exhausting. And I know that there may be some people who think that's kind of funny. Yeah, you're sitting at your computer. But actually, it's actually very, very exhausting. And I find that I need to decompress for about an hour after I stop working and just really do nothing. Take a shower, watch something on TV, take a walk, just to come down from all the people who are in my head, all the characters, all the stories. And then I'm ready to do it again the next
This is
morning.
good advice, Carol. Oh, this is
That
good
one day
advice.
off, really
Yeah.
great advice.
Yeah, very advice. Let's take a break.
You know, I'm convinced of one thing. The divorce rate would be much lower. Relationships would last much longer if we would just say these words when that moment is upon us. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Come on, let's talk about it.
We started out some time ago, and I felt so much in love with you every day, every hour. Could not imagine a moment without you. Then somehow we strayed away from the things that brought us together. Now here we are, you're doing you, I'm doing me. All I know is I'm hurting.
I'm sorry.
You stopped talking to me.
Please forgive me, my love.
It doesn't matter what we're going through, we should always find our way.
We are back, and on the other side of the screen is the lovely Carol Taylor. Carol, what was it like writing Insignificant Others with Pink?
Oh, you know, I love collaborations, particularly with interesting women who have been in an industry long enough to know how it really works. And so to be with someone who is also creative, a writer, but also has the business sensibility from the other side of the table was really appealing to me. And the idea of combining our work in two different novellas in one book was intriguing. We were telling sort of the same stories on different sides of the fence. The idea of infidelity speaks volumes to me. I don't know one person who has not been touched in that way. With infidelity, with cheating, with betrayal on some level. And whether that is with a friend, a lover, family, business associates, you really don't get away unscathed. And so to have the understanding that it's not really what happens to us, because things are going to happen to us. It's how we handle those things that really determine who we are. And so it was a really wonderful experience, not only working with Marissa, who is an accomplished writer, but also to delve into my first book, The X Chronicles, and continue to tell that story in Insignificant Others in its next 4 volumes. So The X Chronicles, my novel, which was published in 2010, had such a wonderful reception, telling the story of 4 very different women. 2 women are black, 1 woman is Dominican, 1 woman is white, telling their stories of their friendship, their issues with addiction, abuse, with being a caregiver for a parent with Alzheimer's, with infidelity, with being single in the city and trying to deal with having relationships on every level and trying to have creative work. was really intriguing because these are our lives. These are the lives of my friends. It's my life. And these are stories that really spoke to me because I write from experience and I write from the experiences of my friends. And so it says that for this book to have gotten such a wonderful reception, and these aren't ordinary women. I mean, one woman she's from London, she's Jamaican. Another woman is a diplomat. She has an addiction to drugs and to alcohol. Another woman is in an abusive relationship. These are not cookie cutter women. They're multi-layered, just like all the women I know. So for me to be able to have such a great reception and then go on to tell their stories over the course of 3 years was extremely exciting to me. And to have license to tell it in any way that I wanted to tell it was absolutely liberating. So the fact that I actually have enough for, and I don't want to say material because it's not material,
Right.
that I have enough for each character to say and to do and to continue on in their lives, because in real life there's no happily ever after. Yes, you might get the guy, but it doesn't mean that you might walk down the aisle. Sure, you might not get the guy, but that doesn't mean that you might not get him down the road, or maybe it's better that you don't. So our stories in real life continue on, and in a novel that ends, it just ends. And so I was really pleased to be able to continue the story of Hope and Zenobia and Bella and Precious, because they really represent different aspects of who I am and all of the women that I know.
And to you, Marissa, the name Insignificant Others, how did you guys come up with that name? The title?
Well, there's the whole phrase significant others. We wanted to flip that and just kind of examine what is significant and then what is insignificant. And we came together with that title. When you talk brown sugar, I mean, anyone who knows brown sugar, Carol Taylor changed the industry with her series.
Yes.
And I guarantee you I knew about her way before she knew about me. And when I joined Facebook, I contacted her and asked her if she was doing another, and if she wanted to work together in the future. And we just kind of kept, touching base back and forth with each other. And so when the opportunity came up from Insatiable Press to do an erotica series, he wanted some new erotica that were continuations of previous books, but new stories that hadn't been released yet. Right away, we came together and we thought, this is going to be perfect for Insignificant Others, and the significant others in her series and the significant others in mine, who are trying to find their way. Yet when the insignificants come in, it changes the whole factor of being significant. Then you become insignificant. I mean, just examining that whole thing, especially when you're talking about an erotic city, is a swingers club, and here this owner watches all of these people come in, and she feels that she's giving them license to do what they need to do to get their lust satisfied. And sometimes your mate is there and it's okay, and sometimes they're not. But even in that situation, just examining, why am I doing this? And what is this about? And is it possible for someone to be faithful? And why am I allowing this type of playground? And then it touches each of their own lives, the owner's sister, and those outside relationships. So trust, cheating, all of that works into the whole theme of insignificance, and as far as others are concerned. So when Carol and I came up with that title, we decided this would be the perfect project for that.
Carla, I hadn't had the honor of reading Insignificant Others as yet, but is infidelity the underlying theme of the stories?
Yes, I think that infidelity and significance, and by significance, I think about not only love relationships,
Right.
but also friendships and familial relationships. Hope, one of the characters in my book, she becomes the caregiver of her mother, who has dementia and Alzheimer's, and she's the youngest child. I became the caregiver of my mother, who had dementia and Alzheimer's, about 4 years ago when I started the first book. And my family was supposed to be there to help, and they just couldn't handle it. And now I understand now on the other side what that actually means. Sometimes you can handle it, and sometimes you really can't. But in that moment, I felt as though my life became insignificant. What I wanted to do became insignificant. And I felt on a level betrayed by my family by not stepping in and helping. And that was something I had to wrestle with. So we deal with issues of infidelity and betrayal on many levels in relationships. It's not only love relationships between a man and a woman, relationships between friends. How many friends have you had falling out with because they didn't treat you significantly? They didn't treat you like the friend that you thought that you were. And your family. You know, we don't pick our families.
Right.
You know, I love my family, but at times we don't always treat each other the way we should. And when I say we, I mean all of us.
All of us, yes.
And it's just the way it is. And we're all going through our own battles. If the last 5 years has taught me anything, and I go through these stories, I work things out by writing. If I wasn't able to write them out, they would stay stuck inside of me. I couldn't pick it up and look at it and turn it over and have someone else go through it so I could see the process because it's inside of me. When I put it on the page and I have the characters interact and do it, I can look at it objectively, analytically, and see, oh, I see why my sister maybe couldn't handle it. I see why that happens. And so it's a really wonderful way to vent and to grow and to understand. So, yeah, absolutely, infidelity on every level played a major role in the premise and in my approach to the book and to the series. Absolutely.
Does the book or the stories touch on forgiveness?
Absolutely. In both novellas, I'm sure you have to forgive your partner, your girlfriends, your boyfriends, your parents, your siblings. I mean, I'm forgiving my parents for stuff that happened 30 years ago,
Right.
and I don't think I'm alone. Relationships are complex.
Yes.
At best, they're complex, and they should be, and they will be, because we are human and we are complex, and we have to sort out our own complexities along the way. There's no manual. When I was a kid, I thought our parents knew everything because, you know, they're parents.
Yes.
But, you know, they don't. And they're sorting things out in the same way. So what we don't see them doing or learn from them, we then have to figure out on our own. And so for me, just being able to look at relationships in this way has helped me not only as a writer, but as a girlfriend, as a friend, as a sister, as a daughter. It's helped me significantly.
You know, I'll be honest with you. I never thought of the word of significance in this way. And so I'm being introduced to a side of my psyche that I never really paid much attention to. But I believe that when someone doesn't feel significant, it creates a whole host of problems and relationship problems. And so I'm glad that you guys dealt with this in Significant Others. Was it cathartic for you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, Marissa will say that we both came up with this title, but really she came up with this title. And I'm really glad that, you know, her novella deals with a married relationship. My novel deals with singles and boyfriend and girlfriend, but not a married relationship. And marriages, I'm not married.
Right.
Marriages are so much more complex, I think, than just being in a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's no less significant. I'm not saying that, but the complexity of living with someone every day and dealing with perhaps children, perhaps grandchildren, the house, the job, the psychosexual analyses that you're doing every day is really something. And perhaps there's a reason I'm not married, but when I think about what married people go through, it's really something. And her characters are, the things that they're going through are pretty amazing, simply what they're doing.
Well, Marissa, let me ask you this. In the realm of marriage, how significant is significance in marriage, would you say? Um, why is it? Well, let me put it this way. I am not married. I've never been married, but I'm going to try and ask these questions because I think there are people out there trying would love to know. Do you think significance contribute tremendously to the deterioration of marriages when someone does not feel significant or they feel that they're being treated insignificantly and so on? Can you shed
I,
some light on that?
I do. That's a great question. I do think that feeling insignificant when you are a spouse, that whole thing that goes along with spouse is that you're not just number one, you're the only one.
Mm.
There's no two, three, or four. You are the only one, the only lover, the only one who gets the benefit of your time, who deserves for you to call when you're going to be late, who you need to be accountable to for what's going on financially, and for how you treat them as a spouse. You are a significant other. You are significant enough to matter. Yet if you don't come home at night and you call it noon and say your car broke down, you not that that's ever happened to me, girl. But you put that person in the position of feeling insignificant. The one who was significant was the one you were with. The decision you made at that moment to not call was more important. The decision you made to fall asleep in that bed and wake up in the morning and still not call was more important. So therefore you shift into the position of insignificant. And so when mates are not feeling as if they're treated the way they deserve to be treated in saying that vow of I do, and you don't, then you do begin to feel insignificant. Yes, I'd never thought of it that way, but that is definitely true in the marriage, that you would end up wanting to know, why wasn't I the choice? Why wasn't I the priority? And in Erotic City, actually, that question is asked. Mm-hmm. Lavender Lewis has this situation and he makes a bad choice. And it's really, really hard for Milan to get over it. It's hard for her to just say, okay, I trust you now, because if she says I trust you now, she thinks that's a license for him to do it again, and he believes, she thinks he believes that she'll trust him again and give him a second, third, and fourth time. So it's really hard for her to just relax and say, okay, I forgive you, and move on. She's different. And in intimacy anyway, a lot of it is so mental for women. If we're in a bad mood or you did something that got us a little off, we're not as easy to shift into, the physical part. So she's having a hard time, and I can see that happening. She does not feel significant at all. That's a great question.
And what do relationships bring out in your characters? How important are relationships when you write to creating your characters or shaping your characters? Carol spoke of the multi-layered characters.
Yeah. Yes.
So
relationships, yeah, they're very, very important. And as Carol said, not just the intimate ones, but I too had a mother who had Alzheimer's, and she passed away in '99, and I'm the youngest of three and the only daughter. So I definitely was more involved in noticing the changes. And, she was stopping at green lights. She was taking money orders to the Department of Motor Vehicles for hundreds of dollars and just handing them over. She would not wait for her change. She would, I as the daughter noticed it, but, my brothers and my father did not. So when it came time to be her caregiver, I was the main caregiver, plus I had 3 young kids. So, it was tough managing that relationship. It did change the relationships with my brothers. Mainly my father and I were the ones taking care of her, him at night, me during the day. So it was tough. So that, in my first book, May December Souls, I have a character who has dementia, who went through some of the things my mother went through. In the book I just finished, You've Got It Bad, a player, as Carol talked about, a player. How did he get to be a player? Well, there's something his father did when he was 14 years old that changed his life forever. His father took him to have sex with his mistress, to teach him how to please a woman. So this man is a cardiac surgeon. He's, handsome. He's got a lot of money. The women love him, but he's a playboy. So getting to the root of all of that and thinking in terms of forgiveness in that relationship is powerful. And I had to write a scene about forgiveness that had nothing to do with me as to what I would do, but what that character would do. So to take some of your life experiences and put that in a story, you have to be true to the characters, even though you've been through that before. So those type of relationships, your teenage children, your sisters, your parents, all of that is so, so important. And that's what I love in my stories. I really love allowing those to either be worked out or not worked out according to the truth of that character.
I was going to ask, how much does your personal relationships come into play when you're writing a book? But you almost answered that question already. So I will just shift gears a little bit and let's talk about some romantic relationships. What do you think is the biggest misperception that many men have about women and dating?
That's a good question. I'm
Is
going
that-
to give it to you, Marissa.
Yeah.
Marissa, you're still on camera, so
Okay. The biggest misconception that men have about women?
yeah, misperception, yes.
Wow. I think a lot of men really believe that every woman wants to get married. And not every woman wants to get married. A lot of men, I think a woman is just trying to catch a man and snag a man, and he's already got his wiggle room plan ready sometimes when he's coming into the friendship part of it. And I think a lot of them believe that the intimacy is not going to turn into something more, but sometimes it does. So they underestimate that when it happens, and they're not quite as equipped. So the power of the power of an orgasm, the power of that oxytocin bonding is very strong. So I think men need to respect that more so. It's easy to love 10 women. It's harder to love one. Sometimes just focusing on finding that one. But I think there is that misconception. A lot of men really think that we all want to be married, and if we're not, what's wrong with you? And we need to stop that. A lot of women are single by choice. So if I think if men would initially give women that bit of understanding in the beginning and realize that she's not trying to snag him or catch him in that way, and also if she says, I want to be your friend, I want to get to know you without having sex, then respect that too. I think a lot of women need to ask men, where do you want to go? What are your intentions? Without him thinking that she wants to marry him. Maybe he doesn't want to get married and she does in 5 years. Or maybe he's looking for a wife in a year and she wants to stay single because she just broke up. So, communicating and not putting every woman into the same kind of cookie cutter mentality is important.
Okay. I just want to go to the chat room for a second. Christina said, Pink and Carol Taylor love the books. And Christina said, smiles. I know who Christina is. But so I want to flip this question. Carol, I like how you shifted this question to Pink. And that's fine. But I'm going to ask you the next one, right? What do you think is the biggest misperception that many women have about men and dating?
Wow, I just had my answer for the last question, and now you've shifted it to women.
You want to give that other one
I'm going to sneak in that
You wanna
answer,
give that other one a
and then
shot?
I will actually
Okay, good.
answer that question
Wonderful.
while I have a minute to think about it. But I think the biggest misperception or misconception that men have about women is that we fall into certain categories. We're in 3 categories: the professional, intellectual, the sex bunny, and the caregiver. Sometimes we're all 3. Sometimes we're that, and we're so many other things. I think men really should think about women as being multidimensional. We can be lovers and we can be friends. You can really open up to us and talk to us and be intimate on every level. So don't just see us as grouping us. We're really all of those things. Not all of the time, but we're all of those things. And now, the biggest misperceptions that women have about men.
Yes.
That men are one way. That all men are players, or all men are want to be macho, or all men are only this way or that way. The characters in my books, the male characters in my books, are are not always one thing. They are just like all my male friends, my lovers, my brothers, my male friends. They're multi-layered. They are sensitive, they're aggressive, they're defensive, they're articulate, they're tongue-tied, they're angry, they're sappy, they're so many different things, and none of them are the same. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to do Brown Sugar in the first place, which is a collection of erotic black fiction written by a number of different authors, because black characters in writing, in TV, in everything were so flat and one-dimensional. None of my friends, family, were anything like these characters. We are so well-rounded and different and varied that when we really started to show the full range of our diversity, and not even sexuality, I'm not even talking about that, just our diversity and our love and family relationships, was when the audience really responded. Brown Sugar brings together so many different disparate stories. I'm a black woman, Marissa's a black woman, we're nothing alike. And I think that as black people, we get lumped together in a group called Black People, but we're all so very varied and different. And the scope of these wonderful stories, even some that had absolutely no sex in them, it was really about relationships. When that hit the scene, I mean, that first book became a bestseller the first week and spawned 4 books and created a new genre. And now we can all see that we're also varied and different, and we are stronger because of it. I think that's what really makes Black America so strong, is because we are so diverse and so different.
Well, with that, Carol, what do you tell the young lady, maybe mid-20s, that comes to you for advice, crying, pissed off because of infidelity by a man she was cheated on, and she said to you, all men are the same. I'm done. I'm not gonna date for a while because they're all the same. What do you tell her? What do you tell her?
I say that's a good idea. Don't date for a while. And it's funny you bring up that scenario, because when I did Brown Sugar, I did a lot of panels and speaking engagements, and I had women from their teens up into their 50s who wanted to talk about relationships across the nation, not only New York. And I said to them, okay, so for this particular woman, don't date for a while. Get to know yourself. Get to know who you are. And here's the thing. I may upset some people, but we are the common denominator in all of our relationships. So if we find ourselves dating the wrong quote unquote type of man who is not faithful, who lies, who is not good to us, are we making wrong choices? Are we making bad decisions? Because we are the common denominator. Stop, take a breath, look at what you're doing, who you're choosing, and the message that you're putting out. How are you putting yourself out there? And do something different. Do something different.
The guy who plays games, and another young lady comes to you. She's dating him, Brian, throw a name out there. And he plays games. He's playing with her feelings. And she said to you, I want to regain my emotional strength or emotional control. And you said, fine, maybe you should avoid seeing him for a while or returning his calls or whatever the case might be. And she said to you, but I love him though. Carl, I wake up in the morning and I think about him. I go to bed. Before I go to bed, I think about him. What do you tell her?
Well, I think she's given up a lot of her control. And so what I would say to her is that you're giving him all of the power that you really should have yourself. If you actually do love this person, then you should leave this person alone so that you can start to love yourself. Don't waste your time on someone who doesn't really cherish you. You're giving him the green light to treat you badly. And I speak from experience.
Right.
Sometimes we get so caught up in our own dramas that we let these people carry on, and we become a player within this drama. Step out of it. Take yourself away. It's almost like weaning yourself off of this person and this toxic relationship. Go out with your girlfriends. See a shrink. Take some time to yourself. Write in a journal. Take a trip. go away from this person. Do something else. You need to have time to yourself and to let this person see that you're not interested in being a part or a pawn in this game that they're playing, because really that's what they're doing.
I'll go to the chat room again. Christina said, is erotica in the same category as porn? Ask them this question. I asked this question before, Christina, but I guess she wasn't here before. Anyone want to try that again? Is
I
erotica
answered
in
it
the
the
same...
I'm happy to turn it over to Marissa if she's interested.
Marissa, you want to answer this? Is erotica in the same category as porn?
Yeah, Christina, I think it's all in the perception of the reader. It really is. It depends on what, for me, it's certain words that are used in particular, and I think that erotica is much more, the characters are more developed, so you get to know more about them. But there are some people who read a scene in an erotic book and think it's porn and say, oh, that's porn, and I'm not comfortable with that. We're using certain words, or there's a certain position, or someone just met and 5 minutes later and they're in the backseat of a car or whatever, there's a knock at the door and it's the plumber. You know, those commercials are on TV now, I think, and as we said earlier, I think people are lightening up to it a little bit more with the erotica that's come out from, you know, from Brown Sugar to other erotica that has been out over the years. It's much more commercial now, so I think that people are defining it for themselves. It all depends on how you perceive it, really. How does it make you feel? As Carol said before, romance makes her feel one way, erotica another, porn another. So it's all in the eye, or in the head of the reader, so to speak. That's what I believe.
So it's the reader that transforms it into porn.
Yes.
Okay. And the second question Christina asked is, can reading erotica be viewed as a sin in the Christian community?
I think it can be. I think that the guilt factor, that's one of the reasons why I started writing under the name of Pink, because there's so much guilt, and that makes me very sad. It really does. The topic was discussed on Oprah one day, and I think a lot more women were open to discussing the fact that we feel guilty because we are really taught that you will go blind if you touch yourself. You will not be worthy of having a husband if you don't save yourself. If you have sex before marriage, no one's going to want you. And whereas men don't get as many judgment calls as women do, we are taught to believe that it is a sin and that sex is a bad word and that it's a dirty word and that you are sullied if you have sex before marriage. So the guilt that I experience in the conversations I have with a lot of book club members, you'll have 10 members and 2 of them don't do this and others don't do that and some cringe about this, and then the one you think is the most conservative is the one who's been to a nudist colony or whatever. There is a lot. Oh, great. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, there is a lot of guilt that we as women feel, and I think we need to get to the point where we are giving ourselves a break and figuring out where that came from. Where does that come from? Why do we see it as a sin? Some people think writing erotica is a sin. I had someone tell me, oh, you're better than that. Better than what? I'm writing about a genre where sex is involved, and I was writing about sex before in my women's fiction. I'm just using different words for it. So people will put labels on you and judge you because it makes them feel uncomfortable. But it's in that as well is very, very, I think it happens a lot with women in particular. But sometimes those same women that are saying that are reading it. So you never know.
Why do you think that the word sex creates so much problem for so many people?
I just think that we are taught that it is a dirty word. Okay. That you are not supposed to feel pleasure. There are some women that are 40 years old and they've never had orgasms because there's something in their mind. There's a videotape in their head that's telling them to stop, that they can't, that it's bad, that something's going to happen to you if you let yourself go. And so sex itself, and there are some aspects of sex people do take advantage. There are people who abuse others. There's rape. There's so many things that are going on in our community that involve sex. that gives, a bad connotation as well. But two grown folks who are consenting and alone with each other, doing what pleases them, even if it's a room full of people, to each his or her own. And yes, sex, that's how we all got here. My own pastor reminded me of that. He said, you know what? That's how we got here. Don't feel bad about it. It is what it is. Keep doing what you're doing. And, we to write a women's fiction story and not have any sex in the relationship, to me, you can close the door and say that they're in there and the walls are, the windows are getting hot and the whole bit, or you can take them between the characters' legs or under the sheets or however far you want to, but it's going on in our society.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because my next question is on a scale from 1 to 10. Where does sex rank in a good relationship?
Where does sex rank in a good relationship?
Yes. A good romantic relationship, a good marriage, a good, boyfriend and girlfriend. Where does sex rank? 1 to 10.
I think sex is really, really important. It's an expression of emotion and connection and bonding. And in a realistic world, a lot of couples don't make time. They don't have sex as often as they like, or they're not in the mood, or they're going to bed late, or the children are sick. And so it's good to have sex, and if you're doing it, I don't know, once a week, once a month, whatever works for you, so that you're not feeling guilty if you don't do it. But I do think it is really important. It's a great expression in a relationship, or in a marriage, or when you're dating, to have good sex. And if you don't, try to find a way to make it better. There are a lot of problems in the bedroom as well.
And this question is for you, Carol. What do you think is one of the biggest marriage or relationship killing things that men do?
Wow. Okay. I think I'm going to bring it right back to pornography.
Uh-huh.
I think that men are far more comfortable watching pornography, and they watch pornography, and then they think that's how, quote unquote, regular people have sex. This is not necessarily the way regular people have sex. And so they have this idea of this is how sex should be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily the case. Men and women, we're like water. We all boil at different degrees. And I think that having a good, intimate sexual relationship is extremely, extremely important, because that is a gateway.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a gateway drug, but it's a gateway to so many other things. Communication, trust, fidelity, intimacy. These are things that you build on, share when you have really great sex, because if you're having great sex, you're having great sex for a reason. It's not only the mechanics. And, there are varying degrees of sex. The more you talk about it and work on it and know who you are and understand it and what you want from it, it will get better and better and better. We don't come into this world knowing what buttons to push, knowing what to say or how to say it. And so you kind of learn by doing and talking. Mm-hmm. And this is something that men and women should do. And I think that men should forget about what happens in pornography. I have nothing against pornography. If you enjoy watching it, watch it. Couples should watch it together if that's something they're into. But understand, this is a movie. This is not necessarily real life. These are professionals.
Right.
Not everyone can do this. Mm-hmm. So if you're expecting that your female mate is going to be able to perform like a performer, then you had better be able to perform like that performer. But you are not those people.
That's fair.
You are not those people. Find out what works for you in the bedroom in every degree.
And, well, in chat room, Christina said, thank you. Good answer, Marissa. And Jay asked, which is more important in a romantic relationship, sex or intimacy? But before you answer that question, I want to ask this one of Marissa. What about women? What do you think is one of the biggest marriage or relationship killing things women do?
I'm sorry, ask that one more time.
Okay. What about women? What do you think is one of the biggest marriage or relationship killing things women do?
One of the big marital relationship things that women do?
Yes, relationship killing things that will kill a relationship or a marriage.
Ah, that's a good one. I think that a lot of times women are probably not communicating in a respectful way.
Uh-huh.
I think that that is something that is really, really important. And a lot of times men can become defensive. When I had my relationship seminar, I went to Dr. Pat Allen's seminars in LA every week and learned a lot from her. And she did these role-playing segments where women literally were talking to men. So I think we need to watch the way we talk to our mates and try to be respectful in what we say. And that's not always easy to do. You know, there are aspects of, I think that one of the biggest reasons for divorce is infidelity and money problems. And that's not just men. Women cheat too. Women are spending the money too. But I think if you're talking about the main reason for women, where we could probably do better is to watch how we speak to our men. I really do think that, and usually when I say that, I've said that on the radio before. I've actually told women to kind of follow a man's lead, and they're like, hey, he doesn't know where he's going, I'm not following him, or, you know, he needs somebody to talk to him that way. It takes a lot of undoing to learn to do that. But I think it is possible. I'm not saying it would save a marriage, and if only one's communicating, that's not great either. You need both to be willing and open to communicate in a respectful way. When you're mad and someone's been caught cheating, or there's anger about something, the emotion gets in it and there's heat. But sometimes it's better to step away.
And you mentioned communication, and this question is for both of you. I'm gonna get to Jay's question in the chat room in a moment, but this question is for both of you. You both write about relationships, very complex, from the ordinary to complex relationships. And you, Marissa, I understand, writes a lot about marriage and so on. When a man gets quiet during an argument in which the woman is seeking answers, how much more should a woman push to get answers? Should she back off? Should she continue pushing? What do you recommend? Starting with you, Marissa.
I've done both. I've pushed. I've pushed, and at a certain time, the other will shut down because, you know, men are like, you know, the more you try to make me answer you or say something, I'm not saying anything. So I don't think that's always the best way to push, but take a break, step away, and give them express that you are willing to be open to them coming back and talking about it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's an hour from now or whether it's tomorrow or whatever, ask them to come to you and bring it up when they're ready to talk about it. And at that moment, when we're sitting down, we want the answers, we want the feedback, and that's not easy to do. But sometimes it takes that. The more you try to press and get the answer that you want, you're going to hear an untrue answer that's going to come from frustration. So sometimes you might be on the brink of breaking up and you're pressuring, and he doesn't want to break up, and he's like, let's just forget it, I'm done.
Yeah.
They're done with the interrogation.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better to just step away for a minute, take a deep breath, and come back to it later when people are seeing more clearly.
Very good. Carl, you want to tackle that, or you want us to go to Jay's question in the chat room?
I can absolutely tackle that. I've been on both sides of the fence. I have been interrogated and put on the defensive, and I have done the interrogation and put someone on the defensive. It doesn't work either way. Have conversations, communicate, let the other person speak. Try to see the other person's point of view. I have a method that I call sandwiching. Mm-hmm. If you have something negative to say, by all means add something positive. I really love the way you make the bed, but if you can sometimes change the sheets, I would love that as well. There are ways to communicate, so don't always focus on the negative aspects, because then that other person will stop hearing you. And this is for men and for women.
Yeah.
I don't like to be backed into a corner. I will shut down, or I will go away. And I think it's the same for men. I don't think men and women are not so different. I think we communicate differently. I think men say a lot with fewer words, and women tend to say a whole lot, and men don't necessarily hear what they should. So I would say step away from the mate.
Yes.
Give the mate a moment to take a week, take some time, and let them know that you're ending this conversation, but you'd like to pick it up another time. And be kind. Be kind and thoughtful in the way that you communicate and touch each other. You don't have to sit there with your arms crossed. You can be angry without fighting. You can be defensive without being aggressive. Take a moment to say something nice. They hear that. I hear that.
I like that. I love that answer. And
Yes.
talking from a male perspective, I do. We must have a similar discussion, but with men present as well, because this is an interesting conversation. So going back to Jay's question, which is more important in a romantic relationship, sex or intimacy?
They're both very, very important, but you can't do one well without the other. They're mechanics, and sometimes men are able to go through the mechanics and be satisfied at the end, but I think that women sometimes need more, and that is what I call intimacy. We can all have good sex, but I think intimacy makes it really great sex. So for me, intimacy is just as important as sex, but I think that they need to work in tandem. So anyone can go through the mechanics, but if you really want to have an understanding of each other, you really have to talk to each other. And that's really just another word for intimacy. Communication, sensitivity, thoughtfulness, kindness, touching, that I think is just as important as the mechanics of sex.
I totally agree. Jay said, I agree, you need both people to communicate in a respectful way for a relationship to work. And then Christina said, thanks for the insight, Carol. And so time is upon us. But I have some questions here that I really would like to go kind of rapid fire. And this is an interesting one. I don't know how fast you can answer this. A woman. I saw my best girlfriend's man with another woman kissing. My girlfriend swears on the ground this guy walks on. Why should I or shouldn't I tell her? Why should or shouldn't I tell her? Either one of you. Carol, you're smiling the brightest. You go for it, Carol. You go for this one.
Funny enough, this happened to me, but I didn't actually see them kissing. I saw them flirting, and this is one of my best girlfriends. And I asked my other girlfriend, should I tell her what just happened? And my girlfriend said, how would that make you feel? And I thought to myself, I love my girlfriend. I don't think I need to step in this moment, because if he is this type of person, she will eventually find out. And she did eventually find out. So I would not say anything, because I wouldn't want to hurt my girlfriend, because if she is very in love with this person, she might not have the wherewithal to see that I'm trying to help. And that might complicate our relationship. I might tell her because this person might not be the best person for her, but ultimately she's an adult and she's a smart woman, and she needs to figure it out eventually, and she will.
You wanna go take a go at Marissa?
Yeah, I posted that question on my Facebook page one day, and there was a range of answers. Some were adamant about staying out of it. Others said if you do say something, you're going to get caught in the middle. And then if you don't say something, they're going to wonder why you didn't tell if later it was found out that you knew about it. So it's a slippery kind of situation. And I related to, one of the persons asked, what if you saw your mother cheating? Would you tell your father? And in that situation, more people felt that they would tell. But with a friend, they felt they'd kind of stay out of it. So it's interesting to me. I would probably tell, and if it was a really, really close friend, not make the type of statement where I knew that this was an intimate situation, but just that I saw so-and-so here, blah, 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 and let them take it from there. Because I would want to know. I really would. Some people say they would not want to know. I kind of treat people the way I would want to be treated, and I would want my best friend to tell me, so I would tell her.
No, before I go into my next sets of questions, Carl, you brought some audio or?
I do. I have 3 copies of the audiobook of Insignificant Others, which is narrated by Paula Jai Parker. And these are
You want to
fantastic.
hold it up? Right.
These are fantastic editions. The narrator is a wonderful actress, and she does a terrific job. I think these are about $25, and I would love to have a giveaway, however Selwyn wants to handle it, of these 3 copies.
Giveaways.
Absolutely.
That'll be interesting. You can leave them. I will find a way to.
I've heard this before.
You'll find a creative way. I mean, you and Marissa probably can help me out with that. But yes, so there are 3 giveaways, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Where can they purchase these though?
The books, the ebook and the audiobooks are available on insatiablepress.com or Amazon. You can Google either of our names, Pink, Carol Taylor. You can Google Insignificant Others, or you can Google Insatiable Press and find our books through our names.
Thank you for that. How important is passion in a relationship?
Passion is tantamount in everything, in work, play, relationships, friendships, and definitely with your significant other, 100%. Because it's really how you approach life.
Yeah.
So I really don't want a tepid relationship or friendship. I don't want drama, and I don't want extremes, but I want passion. And passion really is any number of things. It's just an enthusiasm. It's a liveliness. It's an all-encompassing happiness for being with this person and wanting to do things and share things and to grow together. So for me, passion is not only in the bedroom, it translates into everything about the relationship. Just being happy to be together. It's the same passion of being with friends and with your creative life and with your work.
And why do you believe men cheat?
I believe men cheat because they can.
I like that's quick, Car. I love this, Carol. I love this.
I mean, that's the bottom
Marissa,
line.
Okay, I love this. Is quick. Marissa, why do you believe women cheat?
Women cheat for a much more intimate reason. Usually there's some type of connection that they're getting from the insignificant other that they're not getting from the significant other. Someone is listening, someone is maybe exhibiting that they are more passionate, or even if they're pretending to be, they believe they are, and they're making them feel alive, and there's something that they may be missing at home. And most times when women do delve outside of their relationships, they're more apt to bond and keep seeing that person more than one time. So it's usually not for the physical, it's much more for the emotional.
Thanks for that. Some believe that because they got married, that tells us all we need to know about their relationship. She wouldn't have married him if she didn't love him. What are your thoughts on that, Marissa?
As far as whether or not, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Some believe, right, that because they got married, that should tell us all we need to know about them, about their relationship. And she wouldn't have married him if she didn't love him. That's usually the idea. What are your thoughts on that? Do most women marry for love, or do most women marry because they love the man?
I've met women who married men that they thought they'd fall in love with. I know women who've married men for money, and some have married for love. I mean, it depends on what works for that individual. I think you would hope that it was for love, that someone has fallen in love, and that is their last love in making that commitment of marriage. And that through sickness and health, because if you're in it for money and you're in it for anything other than love, it's going to be a whole lot easier to leave when you need to step up and be there if something were to happen to that individual. I think it's easier to walk away if the love isn't there. And if it's not true love, time will tell. But I do think if you're truly, truly in love, that's an action, that's a verb that you'll show that over time, even far after you say I do.
This is a question I was not going to ask because time is upon us, but I'm going to ask it because I'm curious. What do you think about women asking their girlfriends for advice when they're in trouble with their male significant others? Oh, I get a laugh from
I
both
have
sides
a
of the
rule
aisle.
against that. I do not talk to my friends about my relationship. I just don't. I think it's not respectful. And I think that if you discuss something one day and the next day you're back with that person and everything's honky dory, the friends don't forget.
True.
Most of us don't go to our friend and say, oh, he did this today and that today, and he put gas in my car and he took me on this trip. We usually go to our girlfriends to get validation about being right over some negative situation. So most of our girlfriends are hearing the negative situations, and that's what they're going to remember. So I don't think it's a good idea.
Same thing, Carol.
And well, the older I get, the less I talk about the really big issues in the relationship. But I do talk to my girlfriends, but my girlfriends are women I've known for, a decade or more, and they understand me and the relationship. And I don't talk about every little thing in the relationship, but there are times when you need to speak to someone. And the person I choose is either my sister or a girlfriend who knows me, knows my significant other. And when I say knows me, this is important because it's really easy to give someone advice, but it's really hard to take your own advice because you're in the middle of it. And so it helps to have a third party. And I know that this is a third party who may be weighing in more heavily on your side, but if it's a good girlfriend who knows you, she can actually be very objective. So I don't run my man down to my girlfriends or to anyone, but if I will say to them, I'm a little bit confused about this happened, what do you think? I will most definitely do that. It makes me feel better.
What does either of you do to de-stress? You write a lot, you have deadlines. Marissa, you spoke about so many things that you're doing at the same time. What
Yes.
do you do to de-stress?
I read to relieve stress, or I get a massage, or I go to a movie, or like Carol, I sit in front of my TV with that DVR. There are a lot of things that I do that are purposeful in getting to the point where I need a break.
Okay.
And even if it's just, taking a weekend off and doing nothing or going on a cruise, we cruise every year. It's recharging the battery. And it's really, really important that you do that. There can be so much burnout in this business. A lot of authors are going through a lot of health issues because we're sedentary and we sit, we probably not eating right, we don't get enough exercise and the stress of deadlines. So you have to definitely relieve your stress. It's going to make your relationship better and everything else.
And you, Carol?
I do some things that Marissa does. Absolutely. I will try to decompress at least an hour after work every day, where I will lie on the bed and look out the window. Where
I'm
I
going to
will
take that from you. Sorry to
do
interject.
nothing.
I'm going to take that from you.
1 hour after I'm finished working every day. I can't just transition from writing to not writing, to doing something else. I have to really sort of come down, decompress. So I'll literally lie on the bed and do nothing. I'll look out the window, or I will take a day off where I do nothing or whatever it is I want to do. 3 times a week in the warm weather, I will go and look at the water. I live in Brooklyn. I'll go to Red Hook and I'll look at the water. I'll have a picnic. I'll have a sunset, wine tasting. I'll do something that allows me to be somewhere else, to breathe some fresh, salty air. I'll go to the sauna at my gym. I'll take a yoga class. I'll do something that reinvigorates me, that takes me out of that world, and makes me feel refreshed when I'm finished. And sometimes I like to just sit on the couch and look at some mindless TV. But all of those things really do sort of re-energize me and my psyche and my brain. It gives my brain some room to work.
You discharge and recharge. I like
Absolutely.
that. What is next for Caro?
Well, our next Insignificant Others is due
Oh,
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
And it's due tomorrow. And it will be out probably in about 6 to 7 months. And we're going to be promoting the first Insignificant Others and the next. I'm working on, still my other stories and other books, and working with clients, editing their work. And I teach creative writing at NYU and City College, and editing and publishing. So for me, life is editing and writing, and that's just the way I like it.
And for you, Pink, what is next?
Well, I'm doing some events right now, some conferences and Decatur Book Festival, and some touring and promotion that revolves around Pink, along with Mary Honeybee Morrison, and also my book under Marissa Monteilh, You've Got It Bad. The ebook version just came out, and the print version comes out August 6th. So I'm doing some promotion for that. The sequel to, well, the prequel to Erotic City, called The Making of Milan, as you said, is coming out next year. And then getting this part two, The Insignificant Others, knocked out. That's due, as Carol said, due tomorrow. And also, I'm writing my first nonfiction book called Find 100 Ways, and it's actually a book about romance. And there will be 100 ways for women and 100 ways for men to be romantic with their mate. So that I want to do by 2015. I started working on that last week.
I would love to have you back to talk about that when it comes out.
Yes, I'd love that.
And so in the chat room, Jay said, I agree. There are times when you need to speak to a good girlfriend. And Christina said, the cleanup woman is always around. Don't discuss your relationship with any woman. Calypso said, very engaging, informative, and funny. I enjoyed. And Jay said, very informative. There are a few things that I need to reflect on and maybe fix. Thanks, Carol, Pink, and Selwyn. And I have to ask this. If there's a question you expected this evening but wasn't asked, what would that be? You, Carol.
Oh boy.
Yes, you. I like to put you in the spot.
My goodness. Oh, there were so many good questions, so varied, so intricate and complex. I'm not quite sure if there is or was a question that wasn't asked that I expected, to be honest. I think I may have expected a personal relationship question, and I'm very glad that didn't come, but certainly